Hello, listeners of the Ritwit. Let's talk about plot ninjas. Not how to use them in your writing, as we've already covered that in episode 14. But how you can sign up to become a plot ninja yourself. This week, we at the Ritwit are sponsored by the Plot Ninja Dojo, where you can study plot ninjutsu and leap into stories where writers are stuck in writer's block.
Good day, my students. I am Master Donald, and I will be your sensei. Clear your mind, master your focus, and pounce into the story with all the flips and hi-yahs you can muster. This time, students, we shall leap into a story where the author has the main character backed into a corner with seemingly no chance of escape. You ready, ninjas? Hi-yah! 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 That's the spirit. Let's get kicking!
It's over, Smitherson. Hand over my money or you're gonna sleep with the fishes.
Come on, I don't have $10 trillion. I'm just one man, not the U.S. national debt.
You can't sweet talk your way out of this one. You're surrounded by 50 of my men, all pointed pistols right at your chest. I've also hired some mercenaries to shoot those bazookas your way in case you're wearing a bulletproof vest. And if you escape that, my satellite is also flying overhead, ready to fire a laser straight from orbit to incinerate you.
Sheesh, how much power do mob bosses have these days?
It's the 21st century, baby! Your time is finished, Smitherson. Nothing can save you.
Wanna bet? Plot ninjas, attack!
No, my men! All 50 of my men have been slaughtered in 1 second!
Good job, ninjas. Get the mercenaries, too.
No, my mercenaries! I paid good money for them!
Now, time to get that satellite. Plot ninjas, do your greatest ninja leaps.
Hey! No, my satellite! That cost me billions!
Go, Smitherson! Advance the plot! Thanks, plot ninjas! I'm getting out of here while I can!
Rest assured, Smitherson, I will return for you when the author of this story writes the ultimate climax. I'll rain down helicopters, armored cars, and tanks against you!
Sheesh, how much power do mob bosses have these days? Plot ninjas, depart! Excellent work, my students. Now, on to the next story. But first, perform 100 flips, ninjas. Keep flipping, ninjas. Ninjutsu is all about flips.
Want to be a part of this, listeners? Sign up for ninjutsu training at the Plot Ninja Dojo today. Unclogging the plot constipation of writers everywhere. We really need a new slogan. Welcome, fellow nerds, to another episode of the Ritwit, the show where we lit twits get our mitts on skits and twiddle bits about writting hits.
Don't we just?
Isn't it amazing? God, I really need to take that Plot Ninja Dojo advice because I could use it to shape up. I'm sure Donald would love having workouts of that kind too, right?
I certainly would, but I don't. Usually, I'm good enough that I don't need plot dojos or plot ninjas. I'm so good that I even remember the name of it.
You don't need plot dojos. You're the sensei after all.
Oh wait, that's true. I am a sensei. That's true. I'm using since I don't need them. I happily train other ninjas. So.
Implying that you ever knew ninjutsu, right?
I read a book once.
I'll leave that there.
I can do a lot of yoga.
Oh boy,
that's all right. The people I train somehow become ninjas, so clearly something I'm doing works.
Something you're doing works, or the stories that we concoct are just crazy. I really thought it would have been fun to. I really thought it would have been nice if we'd gone back and done our previously. We wrote ourselves into a corner stories, whichever episode of the Ritwit that was.
Right, but then that's lazy. We already solved those. That was the whole point of that episode.
Fair enough. For more on that, listen to
Okay, fine. This is the next episode, so I'll allow it. For more on that,
listen to episode, what was it?
14 of the Ritwit. Okay. Alright, so since it's our weekly format, we just did what will we rip off from this month last time, we're just going to go straight into it.
Sure. I am all for that.
Okay, so what we're talking about this week?
I was about to say, the set of episodes we're doing this time are less mainstream styles, and we talked about scripts last time. Now we're going to talk about blogs and essays and the works, whatever the works
basically just blogs and blogs and essays.
Yeah.
I just wanted it to be 3 because it's a nice flow to it.
All right, fair enough. Rule of 3 as a comedian perspective, I suppose.
Yes, yeah. Well, it's
anyway,
nice.
We got quite a lot to get through here because blogs and essays are inherently quite different. So we've got tipperoonies for each.
We certainly do. Let's do it. Let's get right into it.
Without any further ado.
So let's start off. Let's start off with blogs.
Sure, it's alphabetically correct. So let's do that.
It is. B is before E.
Yeah. And I is before you, so I'll go first.
Do you realize that our arrangement of the alphabet is entirely arbitrary? That's one of the things I realized. Someone pointed out to me. I'm like, it is. We all just decided that these letters go in this order, but it really doesn't matter.
Well, and the other thing, too, I mean, I live in Japan, of course, and Japanese school children are forced to learn English because English is supposedly the universal language, and I'm wondering who the heck decided that?
People who speak English.
Well, I was about to say, I mean, I'm not going to complain
it's probably
from the perspective it's
they're
easiest
the ones
for
that
me.
Conquered half the world back in the day.
The sun never sets on the British Empire. But, you know, I mean, it's one of those things that I really appreciate it because it means I don't have to work hard. But I honestly would prefer if I had to learn another language to, you know, facilitate cosmopolitanism. It's awesome. It's fun.
And not to get too political, but yet, of course, now in England, they have all that Brexit people. They're like, they don't like these immigrants.
I was about to say, are you sure you're not referring to what some very, very conservative Americans are saying about Mexico?
Well, the people in England do that too. Like that's
I'm not saying that they're immune. Let's stop talking politics. I hate it.
I know, but like I just want to bring this up. A good stand-up comedian, Trevor Noah, that I listened to, brought this up. It was funny because like that's what the whole point of Brexit, that people were upset about immigrants, and he said if there's one nation on Earth that has no right to complain about immigration, it's Great Britain. And I'm like, that's true.
Wait, complain about because we emigrated from there. We didn't immigrate to it.
Well, I know, but I'm saying they conquered half the world.
All right.
They invented colonialism. They have no right to complain about other people going into their country. Anyways, on that political note, let's talk about blogs.
Well, and it's not a terrible segue because obviously blogs can be, you know, just about anything. They're like.
Literally anything we talked about could have led into a segue of this. That's good.
Well, I mean, is this the one that yes, I did. Okay, well, I'm going to save that for the tip, but there's this really fun comparison about blogs that I'm going to make later. Hopefully you enjoy it, listeners, as much as I enjoy it.
We'll find out.
But anyway, we'll find out, yes. So, blogs are both a blessing and a curse.
Yes.
They're great because they can be the length you want, particularly if you host the site it's running on, you know, all that stuff. And you can literally use them for any purpose you feel like.
Yes.
They're bad because even your own blogs may be hit or miss for you, let alone your audience.
Right.
As an experienced reader of various bloggers, I find myself looking for keywords in the title to save time on just how much content there could be. Especially with sites that have multiple bloggers at the same place. You know, you find your favorites, you find your favorite topics, your favorite authors, and to heck with the rest because there's just so much content you will get inundated if you're not careful.
Right.
But they are a platform for you to say what you feel like saying.
Mm-hmm.
Blogs are always evolving, just like your opinions, learned facts. Anything that you experience could change what you say on a blog. All of those things apply. So lean into that change. Let your mind run wild. But be sure that you don't judge your success based on views for each individual blog post.
That is the hard part.
You're plenty successful for just putting yourself out there. Freedom of the press and all that.
Again, political.
Well, okay, that's hardly political. It's a right guaranteed to all American citizens, but anyway.
And a lot of other places, except for fascist places.
I was about to say, I can't guarantee it in other countries, which is why I specified America.
I'm assuming for 90% of them it's okay, but there are
if you wanted
a
political
like North
blog,
Korea, that's definitely not okay.
political blog, you could do it. If you wanted to tout conservatism, or if you wanted to be liberal, you could do that. If you wanted to talk about how you love this Broadway show that nobody else loves, you could do that. If you wanted to talk about how your
really
top 10...
You're in Town.
I'm glad you do, because I really had fun being in that show.
I didn't. Actually, I thought it was terrible, actually. I hated the ending. But I liked you in it. You performed in it. You did a really good job of peeing on stage there. No, you didn't really pee, but you turned around.
You said peeing on stage. It's correct.
I know, but you didn't. I just want people to know you didn't pee literally on the stage.
Oh my God. Ruin the mystique. Peek behind the curtain. No, but you could do a blog about literally anything. If you wanted to blog about how awful your grandmother was to you growing up, if you wanted to blog about your dead cat, if you wanted to blog about that time you went to the cemetery, you could do any of those.
Cat. Blog what? Blog entry 2. My cat is still dead.
Hey, I didn't mean it was your entire theme. I'm just saying you could make a blog post about it. Like a memory of the dog that you had that died. If you wanted to do that, Donald, you could.
I could.
I mean, but that's the thing. Blogs, there's no limitation to what content you could include. There is a very easily definable limit on what people will actually read.
Well, yeah,
but,
exactly.
As far as your creativity is concerned, this is the playground. This is the place to do it.
Right. And that's also kind of the struggle for me, because I'm like, oh, I can write about anything. The world is my oyster. The world is my sandbox. What do I do? And then just nothing. Blank.
And there's too many different places to go, so you don't know where to start. Right. That is
right. Like, I've always struggled with blogs, because I always get caught up on, like, is this a good idea? Is this a good idea? Like, I don't feel like you have to stick to a specific formula for every entry. Blogs can evolve over time, and they're as fluid as you'd like them to be. But in order to make sure you have some direction, come up with a general theme and stick to it. I mean, you can have multiple blogs if you want to write about something else, but
sure.
But like, come up with some sort of theme, whether it's cooking, crafting, reflections on the world, idea pieces, opinion pieces, or whatever. Pick a theme and run with it.
Quilting. Then it went.
Yes. An idea I had for a blog once was sci-fi pet peeves, where I basically complained about specific tropes in sci-fi fantasy that irk me in a snarky manner. Like the lack of technological advancement. Like, why in Lord of the Rings do 3,000 years pass before by the time that Isildur
and they're still riding horses,
and they're still using swords, and the armor looks exactly the same, and I get it for the elves, they're long lasting, but the men, like, I get it for the elves, but the men, or like Star Wars. Don't get me started on Star Wars. Apparently, in Knights of the Old Republic, it looks exactly the same as it does in the modern day, and that was thousands of years beforehand. Like, you'd think, with lightsabers acting the exact same way, and blasters acting the exact same way, you'd think, in the thousands of years before that, they'd be like, okay, shooting at this guy with the lightsaber doesn't work. What if we devise a device? What if we concoct a device that disables the lightsaber, or goes through the lightsaber stuff? Something! Rather than spending thousands of years.
I do remember that in the Legends continuity, or whatever the heck they're calling it now, they actually do address that early on lightsabers weren't exactly the form we see them in now.
Well, that's good, at least.
There's also something, particularly, cogent to lightsaber argument, that there are a bunch of various styles, and they don't really explore that in the movies so much as they did in the
movies, it's basically just flip.
Media.
Do a flip. Do another flip.
Well,
like the plot ninjas.
I mean, yeah, like the plot ninjas. So, yeah, I mean, technological advancment. You'd think that in Lord of the Rings they would have invented some kind of engine so they didn't have to ride around.
I mean, like, Saruman has gunpowder at one point. But they call it black. It's black powder. But you think
revolutionary.
Right.
Anyway.
And Gandalf has fireworks. I mean, that could be magic, but...
That probably is. It's Gandalf.
So, but still. Okay, that's one thing. The another thing I had was the lack of safety railings in bridges. You know how many times in Star Wars and Lord of the Rings...
I was about to say, back to Star Wars.
They have these great big platforms and bridges that have no safety railings. Or like that part in Lord of the Rings when Gandalf is fighting the Balrog.
The thing on Cloud City wouldn't just be this narrow walkway, like you're supposed to somehow survive walking across basically a tightrope, hanging literally hundreds of miles in the air.
Well, like, there might not even be a ground on that one because it's gas giants. So.
Well, there's that too.
But anyway, but also Like in Lord of the Rings, when Gandalf fights the Balrog on that bridge, maybe he would have survived being drug off the bridge if there was a safety railing. But there isn't. They just walk across.
Fun thing about safety rails. Listeners may... I don't know if I ever said this on the podcast, actually. When I first came to Japan, I actually had an accident.
Oh, no. I didn't know this.
I was riding a bicycle, and it was down a ramp that didn't have a safety rail. Oh. And I happened to I had a problem. I was coming from this upper area and going down the ramp to go to my next destination, right? Mm-hmm. And so I turned onto the safety rail, but I ended up turning too wide, and so my bike ended up like right along the edge. Well, there's no rail there.
Oh God!
So I didn't have anything to push back against. And so, like, literally, I'm sitting there about to finish my turn, go down the ramp, and all of a sudden, my bike tips over the side, and I fall from the top of the ramp.
It wasn't too far, was it?
It's less than my entire height, but that's still over a meter fall.
Yeah,
from a bike.
Yeah.
I ended up getting scraped up pretty bad. I actually did go to the hospital on that one, just as a precautionary thing. And my legacy in this town, they put a safety rail on that ramp.
That's your mark on this town.
That's my mark on this town.
Well, that's good.
Sorry,
I'm glad you made a difference somewhere.
Exactly. Somehow I made a difference.
But anyway, so that's basic. Stuff like that is what I talk about. But there's a lot I could have done with this blog. But I ended up not doing it to do shifting my focus as a writer. But I could have done it. I totally could have, I swear. Believe me, David.
All right, I'll believe you. I have no reason not to.
No, I gotta be defensive here. No, okay, you believe me? Oh, okay.
Well, okay, fine. I don't think you'll ever stick to a single theme, Donald.
How dare you?
I don't know how many times in the last few episodes it seems like we've been rage quitting more than usual. Anyway.
I mean, I powered through it, but...
Well, we'll go straight into the blog tip-a-roonies because we do have to talk about essays as well.
Blog-a-roonies, that doesn't work, okay?
That does not work. Anyways, blogs can be as simple as a daily entry or complex as a long-form series with multiple installments. Whatever project you try, though, see it through to its finish.
Yes.
With that said, don't try taking on too much until you've proven you can do it justice.
Exactly.
I mean, there is such a thing as setting your sights too high. So if you think, I'm going to have a weekly series that publishes Monday, a separate one that publishes every Thursday, another one that publishes on the weekend, unless you've proven that you can do a weekly series without too much interruption or trouble creatively, don't try, tackling too much at once.
Yeah. I mean, like, well, in a similar vein, this podcast, we tried monthly, because of scheduling, but also because it allowed me to, get the feel of how it all works. If I had gone straight to weekly, it would have been difficult at first for me to...
I think it's still difficult in some respects, but that's
it is. But we're making it work so far. Who knows if we'll stick with this?
I was about to say that's the concern. All right, what you got for a tip?
Okay, my first tip is have a voice. People first started reading blogs due to the content, but they keep reading due to the voice of the author. If you have a certain attitude in your writing people like, they'll get hooked. They'll be more keen to read more of your work regardless of what it's about. That's a nice thing about having a good voice. You get people more interested in reading your other stuff, even if the subject matter, they're like, is it really something I'm into? I don't know, we'll find out. So
yeah. No, I can definitely talk about that with YouTube artists, with sports writers. I run into that thing too. I go because I get caught, my eye is caught by the title or a title card or whatever it may be, and I stay because I enjoy it. If I don't, then I'm just going to leave and not waste the time.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah,
that is a very good tip as well.
Well, thank you.
Another one from me then, number 2. Don't be afraid to revisit things if the topics change over time.
Exactly.
Now, I don't know how often that may be. It's up to you, I suppose, as the author of this blog. But, your top 10 recipes list may differ from year to year, and there's no reason you can't share those changes with your fans if you so choose.
Well, and also, if you have literally nothing to talk about, you could just talk about the same thing, and people, there are people who didn't catch it last time.
Exactly. There is that possibility, too. I don't know of too many people who are dedicated enough to go back to the beginning of your site's history and say, oh, there's that blog post. So, not necessarily overexposing your repeat customers to the same idea, but if things change, so will your mind, and that's okay. Maybe you have to revisit that. I mean, especially when you're doing rankings and stuff, this is relevant. Because
Yes.
content is constantly changing. You're seeing new things. The characters themselves are morphing, so your opinion morphs with them.
Right. Makes sense. Okay, so my next tipperoonie. While it's wise to have a schedule, I mean, this applies to later on. I'll talk about earlier on, but later on, don't feel like you have to have a new entry ready every time, because in my experience, that can stress you out, and often you'll just procrastinate to the last minute before writing a new entry. This is why it's so important to pick a subject you're passionate about. Like, pick something you want to write about. However,
Can I piggyback off that real quick before
yes,
you
go
before
ahead.
you
Go ahead.
One thing that helps if you're starting out a blog is to have a couple of things already made.
Right.
Like,
Exactly.
yes, you can do the intro blog post and say, oh, I'm going to post every day. But honestly, maybe before you create the blog, you should have a couple of things ready to go. So you could set up an easy schedule to meet. That consistency should help. But anyway, go ahead. I interrupted you.
Of course. No worries. So, but yeah, for the first 10 or so entries, though, I say, try to force yourself to meet every deadline. Like this, what I was talking about is later. Like, at first, to get your audience and to seem professional, for the first 10 or so entries, try to force yourself to meet every deadline. And hopefully by the end, you'll be more invested in writing new entries.
And as I said, too, depending on how much content you have ready, you could use those as you're creating new stuff. I mentioned on this podcast a lot, I've mentioned Starburst, the project my co-author and I are working on. I'll tell you more about that next time. because of progress. But the point being that, we aren't really publishing it too far right now because we don't want to, get stuck in the rut of real life happens so we can't turn out new content even though we've promised it to you.
Right.
So we're writing enough ahead of ourselves that we could have a somewhat loose publication schedule, and meet it while continuing to finish whatever we need to finish so we can keep that schedule going.
Mm-hmm.
And much in the same way, blogs work better if you have that figured out beforehand. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know how much you need before you can commit to starting a blog, but if you have nothing, then it's hard to make a schedule because you have to invent something every single time.
Right,
and that
exactly.
pressure, aside from the time pressure that comes with it, that pressure could also affect you as a creator as well.
Right.
Speaking of tips from me, sorry, that was kind of a bonus tip, I suppose.
No worries.
This is the comparison I was talking about, and actually Donald stole my word. I don't know if you saw it or not, but
I didn't.
blogging is like the sandbox of writing.
Oh, yeah, I did use that word. Huh, well, great minds think alike.
Speak for yourself. No, I'm kidding. You can try whatever you
fine,
want.
plagiarism. I'm suing you. That's fine.
Yeah, because I typed it on our script first. Stick to the
I
script.
didn't see it,
for more
so
on that last week.
I don't think it applies to me. From a legal standpoint, I think I'm... No, I'm just...
Debating this is not a good option. You can try whatever you want with a blog using every ounce of sand inside your brain. So feel free to experiment as you grow or change. Yes, picking your lane helps, I do believe that. But where is there room within those alleys to do spur-of-the-moment stuff just because? To make an old joke? Why? Why not?
Why not, indeed. Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, that's always the thing that, like, always kind of gets me. Like, it's a sandbox. I'm like, what can I do? I can do everything. Well, then what do I do? But you're right, though. It's just like, why not? I just need to let it go, and just... That phrase has been ruined by Frozen. Okay.
I didn't say anything about it.
You laughed, though. I knew that was what you were thinking.
No, I actually wasn't thinking about that. I was laughing because...
I was thinking about it, so therefore it's been ruined by Frozen.
I was laughing because you said that was all you had to do, not because of the song. Although now you said that, it's almost even funnier.
Oh, God. The Frozen 2
trailer... At least I'm not singing it.
The Frozen 2 trailer actually looks pretty good, but on another unrelated note. So, don't give up, is my final tip. Don't discourage if you don't get readers right away. No one gets readers right away. Unless you already have a name for yourself, of course.
Well, that's the thing. If you're starting a blog as an established person, you're going to have those fans likely come over. But if you're just starting out through the blog, you're not going to have them at the outset.
Just keep adding entries and keep going and keep promoting it. Eventually, you'll get an audience. Now, this is true about everything. This is advice I need to give myself sometimes too. Like,
give yourself. Well, you're listening to this podcast, aren't you?
Well, exactly. Well, this podcast is the thing. Like, sometimes I get discouraged. I'm like, this podcast isn't growing as much as I'd like it to be. It is growing, but it's not growing as much as I'd like it to be. And I'm like, do I just keep going? What do I do? I keep going. I tell myself, I do this for fun. I do this for me, but I also do it in case, to add to my portfolio. So I keep going.
Sure.
So I try. It does get discouraging sometimes, but I try not to let it bother me too much. So. Mm-hmm. And so should you, listeners.
Any content creator runs into the same thing. So obviously, it's a struggle that we all share. So don't let this bother you that much. It's something you do because you want to do it, and just keep that motivation at the forefront, rather than if people are appreciating it exactly the way you intended or as many people as you'd hoped.
Yep. Well, that was our thing about blogs. That was our essay on blogs, if you will. And speaking of which, that one was pretty forced. But
really, you don't say.
Nah, it was seamless. Right. No one will know.
No one will ever find out.
Yep.
Anyhow, so our summary of essays, we're starting to get into stuff that's less, for amusement and more for educational stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and treat this like essays, as in like school projects, dissertations, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm going to do the same thing.
Okay. Anyway, abstracts are a reader's best friend. If you have a very long research paper, most people won't let the later pages see the light of day unless you've given them reason to follow it, whether it's grading, peer review, looking at your work for citations on their own or whatever.
Right.
My advice, set your paper's abstract in pencil up front. Just in pencil, so you could erase it, right? Then as your paper takes its fullest shape and you've finished your draft, then you put it in pen.
Okay.
Essays are meant to be scholarly, so you have a responsibility to not only edit your own work, but vet it by other people as well.
Right.
Never assume a first draft is good enough unless you've gone through it with a fine-tooth comb afterwards. You may have to rewrite an entire section. You may have to change the order of your arguments. You may have to completely, throw out the structure, maybe even do a completely different second draft. I don't know, but the abstract is really important because that's your hook to readers.
Right.
If it's something they're looking for and they see it in the abstract, they will search through the rest to find it. As opposed to, this is a general paper about music theory, and then they have no idea what they're looking for, so they're just going to look for somebody else's writing.
Right.
Sorry, I use that example because that's more relevant to my academic experience.
Well, of course.
But I'm sure there are other topics as well.
Well, right. Well, I'm going to use my relevant academic sort of studies that I've done, because I was an English major, as I've often mentioned in the show.
Yes.
And since I'm assuming most listeners who are listening to this are writing essays, people who are writing essays here are doing it for school, sit back and enjoy some experienced advice from an experienced essay writer. Barring only a few, I've got all A's in my college essays.
I was about to say, why are you using all anyway? You can't do that with barring a few.
Barring a few, I got A's in all of my college essays. And what I did was I conveyed my topic in a way the professor wanted in a well-organized piece of writing. The introduction is where you describe your entire topic. Don't leave anything out to add to the suspense. Instead,
not a suspense novel.
Exactly. Instead, clearly convey what your essay is about in the opening paragraph. The body of the essay is where you go into details and support your points through thorough exploring of the concept, cited sources, and excerpts from the book / website / whatever other thing the essay is about. And the conclusion is reiterating the point in a more concise manner and issuing a closing statement about what the purpose of this point is. Follow all this with a well-formatted, grammatically correct, spell-checked, and well-written paper. That's all it is. It's nothing much. No.
Nothing much.
And you'll be swimming in A's left and right. And unless your teacher's a real hard ass, which is possible. Know your audience.
There are definitely some professors that are not easy to please.
There was one class I took. It was literary theory, and I hated this class. Like, if I didn't pass this class, I wasn't going to be an English major because I was like, I'm not taking that again. Thankfully, I passed.
I'm curious what you would have done as a major.
I was thinking interdisciplinary studies. I would have mixed it with art. Was kind of what I was thinking.
Oh, okay. Just an intriguing peek behind the curtain there. Yeah. I do really appreciate that you said the details and stuff. However, I want to throw out the conclusion. You said it's a more concise manner. Shouldn't the introduction be fairly concise in its own way?
They're both concise, but the conclusion
I suppose
is like
the reason the conclusion has to be the conclusion should be more so because you also have to reason what you're taking from this, why you're writing the essay to begin with, as a statement of your own opinion belongs there too. So you don't want to make it too long. I suppose is probably
right. Exactly. But anyways, what I was going to say about literary theory, though, was there was this one paper we had to write for. We had to take, like, a scholar that we were talking about, like, and there were all these ridiculous names. I don't remember what they were. But they were these existentialists and, like, these Marxists sometimes, and, like, these people on, like, these various things that were having these so fine points talking about basically nothing. The only one that was any interesting was Freud, but that's because he's Freud.
Well, I was about to say.
But anyway, so I wrote this paper. It had to be like 15 pages. And I had no idea what I was talking about, but I BS'd my way through it. I got a C in the paper, and the reason why I didn't give an F was the professor said, you clearly had no idea what you were talking about, but by God, you tried. And I really appreciate all the effort you did to make it sound like you knew what you're doing. I'm like, well, thank you. I'll take my C. Because, truth be told, I really didn't care. I got a C in that class, and I took it with a grin and moved on.
You took it with to use a term, you took it with a poop-eating grin on your face, right?
Basically. And then I just walked away. And except for mentioning this story, I have never thought about literary theory again.
Thanks to that professor, if you ever end up listening to this podcast.
But other than that, I got all A's in my papers. My favorite classes were the ones where you had to read a story and write papers on the story. I always got A's in those classes.
I was about to say, something worth mentioning here, even before we do Tipperoonies, I think it's worth it. Can we expand this to include, like, short story stuff, too?
I'm not seeing the connection here, but what do you got?
Well, my thought is this. Short stories are obviously a different kind of creative writing. I feel like that should be its own episode. Like, analysis. But... it should be its own episode, but here's why I bring it up.
Okay.
When I was in high school, I took was it AP Literature and Composition? I think it was. That we had an assignment in that class to do a short story.
Okay.
And the reason I bring it up as far as essays go is because it's an assignment for a class. It's still supposed to be somewhat academic writing. Obviously, it's creative. There's more to
I did a few of those in
what
my
you're
own
doing.
Classes. So
right, and so like from the assignment aspect, that's why it ties in here. But the reason I bring it up is because the tips that we're providing for essays aren't necessarily far wrong when you're considering short stories, especially for an educational purpose either.
Right.
Like your beginning, your middle, and end should be defined. It should be very clear. It should not get too long-winded. And trust me, even before really doing much of NaNoWriMo, I had a lot of problems with that.
Yeah.
I've told you about one of them, Donald, but I'm not going to really rehash the entire story.
I think you have, yeah.
Here, but there's this assignment, and it ended up we were supposed to do a 10-page thing, and I ended up doing 20.
Oh my God! I was expecting 45, knowing you.
Well, and that story didn't even feel like it was done. I rushed the ending mad.
Oh God! It's me. I've done that before.
But anyway, I mean that's the thing though, is that if it's an assignment, you cannot ignore the structure. Is the reason I bring it up. I don't think we need to separate it. I mean, maybe we'll do something on it later-ish, but for right now, I just wanted to throw that point.
Well, I guess that's the works part of the title.
Sure.
That little bit about short stories. But back to essays.
I was about to say, and speaking of works, like essays,
that was even more forced, but I'll take it. So.
I'm just trying to make you feel better, sir. That's all it is.
Thank you. Mission accomplished. So.
Good. All right, so yeah, for tipperoonies, never. All right, I got some wisdom here for you guys from all the experience of my years of writing essays and doing fairly good on them myself.
You were cum laude in school, so I'll listen to you.
I was magna cum laude actually, but thanks.
I thought magna cum laude was when you got all A's and everything. You missed one, right? So.
No, it's done by GPA. Summa cum laude is the highest with greatest honor. Magna cum laude is with great honor.
Cooler to me, so that's why.
And cum laude is with honor.
Okay, so you're magna cum laude. All right, so as magna cum laude, what do you got for us?
As magna cum laude, never underestimate the power of proofreading. Please don't shirk that important task.
I'll try not to. With your magna cum laude experience, I will listen. Great sensei.
I mean, that's the thing, though. Is like so many people just assume that even though they're writing this, they assume that it's going to be okay because they did it. And yet they don't go back through and they make stupid omissions, dropped words, stupid spelling things that they didn't catch. Particularly with homonyms, this is common. You know, where the spell check won't give you an error, but it's not the right form of the word or whatever.
Right.
You know, so go back through it. I'm sorry. This is one of my minor pet peeves about it, is that people just assume that the draft is over and it's done and I'm just going to hand it in. No. You have a responsibility to be scholarly, which means you need to look over it again. You should have other people look at it too, because your own set of eyes might be sufficient, but another pair of eyes is never a bad thing when it comes to editing scholarly stuff.
Another stand-up comedian I watched was a Patton Oswalt special.
Oh boy.
And he was talking about women and men, how a lot of times in movies, men are the directors while women are the editors. And so he's talking about this man, like, let's say the guy who I forgot who did it, who did Lawrence of Arabia.
Oh God, I should remember that name.
He was like, oh my gosh, I'm shooting all this film and film's going everywhere. Every frame is a painting. This is a masterpiece. Oh, I'm shooting film here. I'm shooting film here. Oh, it's done. Oh man, I shot a lot of film. And then the woman's like, aren't you done, sweetie? All right, you go away. I gotta make a film out of this mess. I can't send an 18-hour film to the studio. That just made me think of that.
Oh, and it's even funnier because that's presented in the context of a film, but I immediately went to a possible other context that just made
That's exactly what he was going for, by the way. So
I'm not surprised. But anyway, as far as I can tell, Lawrence of Arabia was directed by David Lean. I don't know if that's who you were thinking of or not.
That was who? I didn't know that. Wow. Okay. Well, I don't know.
Sam Spiegel was the producer.
Maybe I was thinking of the Godfather guy,
that's Quentin Tarantino, isn't it?
No, it's not Quentin Tarantino. It's like Francis Ford Coppola.
Francis Ford Coppola. Sorry, Quentin Tarantino did not do Godfather.
Yeah, Quentin Tarantino's like Reservoir Dogs, and like I'm sure Tarantino was honored that you thought that he directed The Godfather.
I'm gonna look this up now because I feel really dumb. Quentin Tarantino. What? I mean, like, I think he did Kill Bill.
He did do Kill Bill.
Much mistaken.
He did.
Oh my gosh, there's so many things that he's done that
Inglourious Bastards.
Inglourious Bastards.
Fargo.
Django Unchained. No, yeah, he did Django Unchained.
No, wait, no. Fargo was the Coen brothers.
You can tell how much I care about movies, listeners. It's a podcast about writing, damn it. Let's go.
Alright, so my tipperoonie. That was a really long tipperoonie for your thing that's so short. It was my bad. No, I brought up.
Sorry.
No, it's my fault. Alright.
Tangents. Anyway.
Don't go overboard, like we just did, with sources and excerpts. Essays are about what you have to say about a subject, not other people. In my experience, having the exact minimum number of sources the teacher/professor asks for, and no more, lets you complete the paper's requirements while leaving pretty room for your own thoughts.
The only exception to this, I would say, is if you're doing a synthesis.
Yeah, I'd say so too, yeah.
If you're doing something that is expressly designed to combine different points of view into your own personal opinion, then it's really important to have various sources and lots of quotes. But like in a typical essay, you're just supposed to use them as, reinforcing what you already think, not necessarily regurgitate what they said about the subject.
Right.
So, at the risk of procrastinators rising up against me tomorrow, have your thoughts organized well ahead of a due date. If you give yourself enough time to mull over what you've written, because that's imperative for this scholarly document.
As
like
it is.
I was also guilty of this, especially when I was in elementary school. I can remember not elementary school, middle school and high school. I can't remember how many projects were these major presentation-based projects, sometimes group, sometimes solo, and I cannot tell you how many times of those I ended up staying up until like 3 a.m. the day it was due, and my parents were both helping me finish the visual aids and stuff because I did not do enough of the job ahead of time.
Yes.
And papers, it's the same way. You know,
right.
It's something that's important for your class. It's important for your learning. So treat it like it's important. Do bits of it every day so it doesn't all pile up and, you know, slam you like a sledgehammer the day before.
Right, exactly.
Anyway, procrastinators, please don't rise up against me tomorrow.
Yes, tomorrow. Or the next day, or, you know, a day later, you know, whatever fits your schedule.
Unite, procrastinators of the world, unite tomorrow.
I was thinking about procrastinating today, but I never got around to it.
All right, what you got?
Okay, as a master BSer, it can be easy for me to just go on and on about nothing to meet the length requirements. See my literary theory paper. But
see my NaNoWriMo stories that never even get like halfway through the story, but I've already finished 50,000 words.
Right. But anyways, don't do that.
Yeah, no, not with an essay.
Even if you finish writing all your thoughts on the subject and if you finish writing all your thoughts on the subject and your paper is still too short, find more to say on the matter. Don't just endlessly repeat the same thing.
Maybe maybe it requires a bit more searching. Maybe it requires finding another source and trying to tie that in.
Exactly.
You know, if it's still too... I mean, I suppose as a professor, not that I am, but if I were a professor, I'd prefer a paper being a little bit short and they had said everything they wanted to say. They'd exhausted their opinions on the subject, rather than it got way too long because they had too much to say.
Right.
Because that's a lot easier to read through.
And, yeah, as long as you meet the page requirement, but yeah.
Well, fair enough. Add a cover page, man. Speaking of that, sorry, one thought that I just had. Sometimes these essays and stuff have cover pages and title pages and whatnot. Please double check, triple check to make sure you're doing the right format for that professor. Yes. There are a bunch of different style guidelines for that, even within the formatting of your paper, like MLA and APA citations and stuff. Please follow those rules.
Thankfully, most of mine we were MLA, but we stuck with that, so that's...
Well, I mean, as an English major, I'd expect the Modern Language Association is kind of important, but, like,
just
know which method you're using and stick to it.
Yes.
If it requires a cover page, there are templates in most word processing software that you can do very easily. You don't have to create things from scratch, which is good because, honestly, I don't know what the heck I'd be doing if I were trying to create a cover page. I'm serious. Like, I get the idea, but, like, how it looks, what things to do with it.
Most of the time, it's just a blank piece of paper
special.
with the name of the paper and your name in the center.
I mean, yeah, it's not hard to figure out conceptually. It's not easy to make on your own. So use the templates that are there. Use the formats that are there. Do the work the way that the professor wants you to, whether that's using the 3 millionth citation system or whatever. Just do it.
Exactly.
Sorry, bonus tip.
Just do it and have a good conclusion. And speaking of good conclusions,
are we good to move on to ours?
To our conclusion, yes. That's it for this week.
Yeah, if you have any more questions, of course, your own professors are the best source to, your own teachers are the best source to ask if you're having trouble with, like, citations and stuff, how many sources. If you have questions with structure and whatnot, go to them first. But if you'd like to ask us for help,
yes,
please don't send all of your assignments to us. We're not your editors. We're just here trying to give you some advice, some tipperoonies. But if you'd like to get in touch with us, please do that through the webpage, MatthewDonaldCreator.com, and the web address that you can use
the email address,
mail us direct. The email address you can use to get us directly is Matt with 2 T's, Matt D at MatthewDonaldCreator.com.
Yes, it's going to be on the link. I mean, how to spell it will be right there on the bottom of the episode. So
we trust you're capable of spelling Matt with 2 T's.
Right.
Please don't walk on us.
Yes. Yeah, but you have any questions? Just general questions to either co-host, specify which one, because we are both Matt D. If you want to follow me personally, go to @MatthewDonaldCreator on Facebook, @MatthewDonald64 on Twitter, and MatthewDonald64 on Instagram. Why 64? Because there's so many gosh dang Matthew Donalds on Twitter. That's what I meant to say. I put Facebook on here. on Twitter that literally every other number afterwards was taken. Every one! From Matthew Donald 1 to Matthew Donald to Google. They were all taken. All of them. Except 64. So I claim that one. As for why that one wasn't taken, I don't know.
I think one guy just jumped the line, jumped the shark to 65 because he thought 64 would be taken after seeing everything up to 63.
There you go. I guess that's as good of an explanation as any.
I don't know. That's just my thought. Anyway.
All right. So
until next time, listeners, thanks for paying attention to us about blogs, essays, and the works.
Yep.
And we'll see you next week with more content.
Yep. I'm Matt Donald.
And I'm Matt David. Until next time, keep writing.
Keep writing.
The Red Witch.